Thank you so much, Professor. All right, so we're getting into a segment where we will ask the professor some questions and he will clear up any questions that we have. So I'm going to hand over to William so that he can facilitate this segment. Afternoon, William, how are you? Do we have William on the call?
Hello, good afternoon. How are you? Thank you. Can you hear
I'm
me?
fine. Yes, loud and clear. But we can't see you yet.
Can't you see me? I think I'm on video. Can you see me now?
All right, I think, can we spotlight him? All right, you can take over.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Professor Rukuni, for the insightful presentation. I'm very honored to be part of this discussion. My name is William Madudike, and I'm part of the Star Leadership Academy alumni, and I'll be leading you through this question and answer session. So I'll be happy to pick some of the questions from the chat box. Because of time, I will not be able to pick some of the questions to spotlight some of you so that you can ask your questions on the video. So please put your questions in the chat box and I'll pick, and Professor Mandi will be answering as they come. I hope we all got that. So I have only 10 to 15 minutes for this section. So my question, as we receive questions from the young people in the chat box, my question, Professor, would be, Africa is bigger when we are truly one, noting the current state as 54 individual countries. What do we need to do to transcend the physical, cultural, and economic boundaries and have one voice and leverage on the numbers we have spoken about and leverage on the aggregate economy? What have we to do to be able to become a powerhouse and become one Africa? Thank you. I hope you got my question.
Yes, William, excellent question. You know, the detractors of African unity always cite huge statistics. There are more than 1,000 languages on the continent. There are so many cultural differences. I tell you what, I've been in more than 25 African countries, maybe 30, over the last 40 years. In spite of all the differences that we have, guess what? The similarities are more powerful. It's we so-called educated Africans who are enemies of African unity, believe it or not. Because the ones that haven't too much formal education, they have no respect for these borders. You know, people will walk from Tanzania, Ethiopia, find their way to South Africa or any part of the continent and cross 3, 4, 5, 6 borders speaking. People in those areas speak different languages, but guess what? Most of the rural Africans are still true Africans. They see somebody who looks like them, but speaks a different language. Oh, they are so happy to say, they love it. So these people don't feel threatened. They can cross borders without documents. They can move products without documents. They believe in African unity more than we do. But at the formal level, the way forward, in my opinion, is to learn intelligently from how other regions have done it and how we can fast track ours. So there's 2 main reasons why regional integration will work or not work. Number 1, political will. Number 2, capacity to then integrate. And guess what? Political will, mostly we were given at independence between 1956 when Ghana became independent and when the Organization of African Unity was created in 1963. We were told by our former colonial masters, you are better off as independent nations with individual relationship with your former colonial master than uniting. Okay, fine, I'm not going to worry about it. But guess what? Today, as we speak, all Africa needs doesn't need even to start with one common border. It can start with the existing political borders, but agree on 2 or 3 things. One, the same foreign policy. Before you go to United Nations, G20, and all this stuff, agree on a common position as Africa. This is our foreign policy. For instance, tell the rest of the world, you harass and you segregate Africans where they are. If you continue doing that, injury to one African is injury to all Africans. We won't allow you to come to Africa and trade. End of the story. You will see what happens the following day, the amount of respect that they will have, because African Americans are harassed in the United States, not because of anything except that we are weak here in Africa. If we were strong here in Africa, no one will touch them. But capacity now is a function of enforcing agreements and treaties that we sign. And I'm happy to say, although the African Union hasn't quite been there, but there is enough legislation now, if it was to be enforced, to ensure that once a treaty is agreed or a declaration is made, it can be legally enforced, actually. So we are close.
Thank you, Professor, for that answer. Injury to one, as you say, is injury to all, and I hope that we can all be that united. I have a question from Nicole Piri from SLA class of 2023. The question is, how is it wise to have 50-year plan for a continent or a country when our short-term plans as governments have not been truly successful? And that's the question.
If you don't have you see, because a basic lesson in strategy, right? There's no single idea or a problem which is solved at one level. Okay, there's at least 5 levels at which any serious plan is conceptualized. And what may appear to be a solution in the short term could actually be a negative thing in the medium term. So just planning short term does not mean you've got a strategic plan. You've got a survival plan. You're just dealing with events and a few trends that are happening. If you have a 50-year plan, you have analyzed it so deeply that you can run scenarios. You can anticipate, even if things don't happen initially planned, you are much more prepared to deal with the changing world. And so don't think that the Japanese and the Chinese are stupid having 50-year plans. Look at what has taken them. In less than 40 years, China from a country poorer than Africa to the second superpower. Within the next 10 years, the #1 superpower. It doesn't come from short-term planning.